Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Can NATO survive without the United States?
Brought to you by Brilliant. NATO is currently facing
What do you think? You don't know?
I don't know. There must be a reason they started working together. Have those reasons expired? I don't know. They tell me.
I think they can survive, but there's a caveat. They have to increase their military spending. I think because, we saw the numbers. We saw how much money America spends on the military, how large their military is. So I think Europe could, because, okay, and it's not just Europe. They still have Canada as well. But they could survive, but they have to adjust their priorities then, because a lot of the defense was, kind of reliant on the states.
perhaps its most significant set of crises in the military alliance's
But let's see what the experts say, because it's just my
They're
opinion.
experts.
Well, not expert, but news people, they know more than I do.
5-year history. As if a war on its doorstep was not enough, the very future of NATO is now in doubt. Donald Trump has long accused the US's European allies of being free riders that don't pay their fair share when it comes to military spending. And Trump's defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, recently said that Europe cannot assume that the US presence on the continent will, quote, last forever. So in this video, we're going to explore how Trump could upend NATO and whether the alliance could survive without the US.
I mean, to be fair, I think the guy is not wrong. I think Europe should never assume, whether it's Biden or Trump president, they shouldn't assume. They should be like, NATO should be a plus, not a,
A requirement.
exactly, yeah. I'm sorry, not NATO. America in the NATO should be a benefit, not like, okay, this is what's saving grace,
Explore which world in it on the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel or in your favorite podcast app. Now, there are a number of ways that Trump could upend NATO. The most dramatic and disruptive move would obviously be if Trump were to fully withdraw from the alliance, something that he has floated before, and something that his former national
Do you know if he needs a Congress approval for that, or that's his decision solo?
I don't know.
security advisor, John Bolton, thinks it's highly probable he will attempt. However, others view Trump's flirtation with the US's withdrawal as merely a bluff. It's also worth pointing out that there are some guardrails against unilateral withdrawal. In 2023, Congress approved legislation prohibiting any president from unilaterally leaving NATO. However, the legislation isn't airtight, and Trump may try to just ignore it. Regardless,
Well, that's new, because they saw a first term he was going to, so they're like, no, we can't do that again. Yeah.
So I guess
Trump
it was
would-
never a question that US will withdraw from NATO.
Until he became president, yeah, I think so.
have to pull out of NATO to significantly shake it up and force it into becoming a primarily European alliance. After all, he could attempt what you might call a soft withdrawal from NATO. In other words, undermining or withdrawing US support for alliance in all but name. Trump could, for example, declare that the US would not abide by NATO's Article 5, the foundation of NATO's commitment to collective defense, which states that an attack on any NATO member state should be considered an attack against them all. Trump has previously undermined Article 5, claiming last year that he would not protect NATO allies that didn't meet their spending targets from attack, and would encourage Russia to do whatever the hell they want, as well as stating more recently that NATO troops deployed in
The good news is Lithuania is meeting the target, so he will protect Lithuania.
Ukraine as part of any peacekeeping contingent would not be covered by Article 5. Trump could also strain Article 5 by just refusing to react
But
to a border
I think he can easily change his mind too as well, so there's no guarantee.
case of Russian aggression, like, say, some sort of escalated hybrid warfare attack on a Baltic state. Because once there's some sort of obvious internal disagreement over when Article 5 actually applies, it'll lose some of its deterrence effect. Alternatively, or additionally, Trump may also pursue a soft withdrawal by pulling out tens of thousands of American troops from Europe, something that European officials are reportedly worried will likely happen. Fears of a troop withdrawal are highest on NATO's eastern flank, the Baltic states, for example, where the presence of US forces is a key part of the alliance deterrence against potential Russian expansionism. Trump could, for example, start by withdrawing the 20,000 American troops that Joe Biden sent to Europe after Russia invaded Ukraine, and this alone would amount to a 20% reduction in the total number of US troops on the continent. Ultimately, whatever Trump's exact approach to NATO is, doesn't make a huge difference to the simple fact that the US no longer wants to be the primary security guarantor to Europe, and that it's up to Europe to take charge of its security.
Yeah, so it seems like either way, Europe has to do something, because it's already looking like US doesn't have any interest to be a part of NATO. So when you see someone starting to lose interest, so you figure out, okay, what to do just in case they choose to resign completely, because you don't want to find out later. You want to do it as soon as possible.
So how would a US-free NATO actually fare? Well, there are some reasons to be optimistic. For starters, NATO excluding the US still counts more than 1.5 million active military personnel, beating its most obvious adversary, Russia, which last year set the 1.5 million mark as its new target. Additionally, the collective capability of European NATO members vastly outstrips what Ukrainian forces were working with when they managed to halt and push back Russia's advances in the early stages of the invasion. Europe also has a well-established defense industry producing some of the most advanced weapon systems around, with half of the top 10 global arms exporters being European NATO members. On top of this, spurred on by Trump's first term, and more importantly, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, non-US NATO members have begun to ramp up their defense spending. In fact, as of last year, a record 23 of 32 NATO members were meeting or surpassing the 2% target, up from just 3.
I wonder, did they decide to meet this target because they were in fear of Russia and, they said, okay, we need to step it up? Or they realized that, okay, there's a real possibility Trump might get reelected and we need to up the target. What basically, which reasoning pushed them to reach the goal?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because here you see the jump in 2024,
Yeah.
and he made that statement in 2024, early February. So when did all of a sudden all this money start to boost up quickly?
It was
immediately?
clearly, I mean, because I don't know if there was any significant developments in the war where Russia became more of a danger than it was in 2023. So I think it might be
When did Russia started?
2022.
2022?
3 members a
think.
decade prior. The point we're making is that despite some of the more fatalistic prognosis of the total collapse of the continent's security should the US leave the European theatre, Europe actually has a pretty strong base.
All right, so listen up. State Farm was trying to charge me $197 for car insurance. No, thank you.
However, this does mask some of the more significant problems that would need addressing. For starters, while European countries have pledged to increase defense spending, it'll take time before this money actually translates into troops and tanks. The fragmentation of Europe's defense industry, with individual nations naturally wanting to push their own domestic industries, also creates enormous inefficiencies, delays, and high maintenance costs. On top of this, many of Europe's militaries, the UK being a prime example, are struggling to meet their recruitment targets. According to the IISS, since 2015, Europe has hardly increased the number of combat battalions, or in the UK's case, has actually cut 5. This is in stark contrast to the 300,000 new soldiers that the continent would need to recruit to defend itself without US support, according to calculations by Bruegel and the Kiel Institute. The US's withdrawal would also leave other significant gaps, with the most obvious relating to nuclear weapons. If Trump were to pull back the US nuclear umbrella from Europe, NATO would lose what it is called its supreme guarantee of the security of the alliance. Of course, both France and the UK are nuclear-armed states, but only have a fraction of the warheads that Russia or the US have, nor do they have any tactical nuclear weapons. Less dramatic than nuclear weapons, but critical to NATO's ability to act, is the US's role as the alliance's strategic enabler.
I wonder how much time they would need to up the nuclear weapons production. I honestly, I have no idea. Can you say in a couple of months double that number? Or would doubling that number take a couple of years or maybe a decade? I have no idea how the production works for that type of weaponry.
As various analysts have pointed out, the US is NATO's primary provider of
Because you don't need it. Well, you hope you would never have to use it, but you need to have it just in case. So it's kind of like spending more in it, making more of it might be a waste of money.
Especially if
But-
your enemy has like 5,000.
Tenfold what you have, yeah.
airlift capabilities, air-to-air
I
refueling.
honestly now watching this, I think that's the biggest deal. It's not even the number of troops. It's not nothing else. It's that the threat of nuclear. Like if the states withdraw, Europe really doesn't have nothing in terms of that's tenfold difference. That's nothing.
I'm surprised as a collective it doesn't have more than that. Like, look at the number.
Well, they don't have
Let me
because
see the number.
yeah. They don't have because they don't spend. They don't spend money to make it. That's why they don't have it. That is
How
crazy.
come only these two?
Others are not nuclear states. They don't have the technologies.
Well,
Well, so I guess Germany don't have the technology because for historical reasons, nobody wanted Germans to have it. Other countries, they're not exactly war power, known in military sense. Finland has pretty strong military, so I wouldn't be surprised if they,
and Sweden.
I don't know about Swedish military. I don't know. Interesting. Very interesting.
Analysts have pointed out, the US is NATO's primary provider of airlift capabilities, air-to-air refueling, high-altitude air defense, space assets, and operational intelligence.
Wow.
These are things that are necessary to deter and, if needed, defeat a major power aggressor, according to 3 leading military experts, and are critical to sustaining operations beyond the opening phase of a conflict. European countries clearly need a robust plan, sustained over a decade, to strengthen their ability to defend Europe with less America, according to Camille Grand from the European Council on Foreign Relations. In the short term, Bruegel's analysis suggests that the continent will need...
I think it's good that Europe is preparing for this right now and not if it happened. Because, you know, Trump, he's a talker. He likes to talk a lot. So it might not happen.
Yeah.
But...
And he only has like 4 years.
Yeah, but if it does happen, like they need to be prepared now. Not honestly, they well, I guess they started preparing last year. We can see by increased spending, you know.
Spend an additional 250 billion euros a year, roughly doubling collective defense spending to around 3.5% of GDP. The natural question then is, how can Europe fund this? Joint EU borrowing in the vein of the COVID recovery fund could play an important part in this, and it's something we discussed in a recent video, which we've linked in the description. Defragmenting the European defence landscape could also reduce costs too, and the EU could relax its spending rules to allow national governments to borrow more for defence without risking being in breach of EU rules. However, it still leaves European governments across the continent in a difficult position. Prioritising defence spending by hiking taxes or borrowing more, while at the same time slashing spending in other areas, will, for many people, be unpalatable to say the least. Now, the thing is, often in politics, we need to understand a wide...
Yeah,
Can I see the comments?
yeah. Interesting situation. Yeah. You know what I wonder the most is that, so let's say Europe does spend more on this military. How is it gonna affect all the free healthcare, free education? How's that's gonna get affected? Is it still gonna be free? Is it not? Because that's like the 2 big talking points. Oh, Europe has free healthcare and free education. Well, that's why, because they have that money that we use for military to spend on education and healthcare. So if now they use the same amount of money for military, would they still have the money for that?
I think they're gonna prioritize the women and children because the birth rate is going down. So what's a war if you don't got people to fight?
That also true. Yeah, the birth rate, they need to work on that too. So
So I don't think they're gonna just sabotage healthcare.
But the comments, 10 years ago, I never could imagine this chaos going on today. Yeah. RIP the European soldiers who fought and died during the Afghanistan war when Article 5 was in action. Rest in peace. Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. The thing is, as long as increased defense budget is spent on stuff produced domestically, it's a net benefit for the economy.
True.
Ironically, that is true. That is true. That's one of the reasons why America does spend so much on defense, because it's all American companies, so the money stays in.
But in Europe, do they have? There's not too many locations that have the facility to make those
They
things.
they do actually. This you saw the 5 countries. 5 countries on
Just
Europe.
those 5 countries.
Well,
and
but
the
that's in
others.
top 10.
Okay.
So the others might be like in top 20. There might be like 5 more. So they do have the facility. They can produce it. There's just basically the idea is don't import it, stay within Europe. That's a good point. That's a good point. To strengthen the economy because the economy is struggling a little bit. Yeah, that's not a bad. Some people are thinking.
Yeah. Wow. A lot is going on. Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord. And as always, share as much kindness as possible.